Derek Gunn basically says, who's a Philadelphia reporter, he says two different things. The first one is that Eagles head of security, Dom DiSandro, or people know him as Big Dom, when he got suspended after the Week 13 game between the Eagles and the 49ers, when him and Dre Greenlaw got into it very, very little, but he was thrown out, as was Dre Greenlaw, for essentially kind of looked like he was throwing a punch. Then the NFL came out and said that you can't have these types of security men on the sidelines right with you. His suspension caused a ripple in the locker room when it came to Nick Sirianni's emotions. Supposedly, Sirianni would get into arguments with coaches and players without Big Dom there to keep his emotions in check. The other thing he reported was that Jalen Hurts struggled to handle the pressure that came with signing his big 5-year, $255 million extension. Quote, Hurts was pulled in numerous directions on and off the field after inking the extension. So, and also, not only that, even on top of that, to confirm that sort of report, Fletcher Cox, who was very, very well respected throughout the NFL and amongst the Eagles, he also said that he was displeased with the lack of emotion from Jalen Hurts on the sidelines, and he would hope that he would have a better connection with his teammates, which didn't turn out to be the case. Now here's what's funny. The blame just keeps going around. After the devastating loss against Drew Lock and the Seattle Seahawks, we have to remember, this was Jalen Hurts in the post-game conference after that abysmal loss to Seahawks. Let's take a listen.
I've been talking about execution all year. Been on the same page. Everyone been on the same page, and we didn't execute. I don't think we're committed enough. Just got to turn it around. It's a challenge that we have to embrace. Just continue to see it through.
There are so many problems when it comes to the Eagles in this season. Going from, almost this close winning the Super Bowl to falling apart completely and losing 5 of your last 6 games. I want to know, not only is this a bad look for Sirianni, but is this a bad look for everybody, the Eagles staff, the Eagles players? How bad of a look is this for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, they're definitely under the gun, and I think principally it's Sirianni who's under the gun. Lowry as the owner looks to be sticking with him. I mean, it'd be a little late now to fire him, right? We're getting close to the draft. I'm sure they've been planning for that, and they're planning for next year to not. If you're going to change coaches, you would have done it by now. So I would say he's around for next year. Well, the Big Dom is going to be back. How long was he suspended?
He was suspended for basically the rest of the season. He was not allowed to be out there. I don't.
So I guess he'll be back.
A weird situation.
Leaders have people that help them, and people that they confide in, and people that they look to for help when they're having difficulties. And so it looks like Sirianni leaned on Big Dom to help him control his emotions and help him with his relationships with both the players and the coaches. So not having him suspended there was something they didn't expect, and it happened late in the season, and that's when they were having a tough time, and it was kind of something that spiraled. So I don't know. I think that Sirianni is probably thinking, wow, can any more things go wrong? Can any more bad publicity? What am I going to do to try to correct it? Well, the best thing you can do is go out and win football games. So I'm sure that's what they're going to be trying to do next year.
It's very hard at this time to win football games because we're in the off season, but this is a horrible look. That 6-game skid at the very end of the year, I believe they lost the last 7, but that last 6-game skid was very, very bad. The Eagles went 1-5 in the last 6 games, which is including the playoffs, where the last game against Baker Mayfield, who they beat the crap out of, I think in week 2 or 3, they lost 32-9 and made Baker look like an all-pro quarterback. Just the entire Buccaneers team. They just dominated everything the Eagles tried to do. During that 6-game skid, the Eagles averaged 18.8 points while giving up 28.6. The offense gave up 12 turnovers, or 2 per game. And we have to remember, the only reason why the Eagles won one of those games was because the Giants had Tommy DeVito out there, who I believe was down 20-0 or 20-7 in the first half. You then replace him with Tyrod Taylor, who nearly mounts a comeback. They were down by 8 and had an opportunity to throw it in the end zone, which was incomplete, to potentially tie the game. There was major disruption going on around the Eagles. What I don't love is that I think Jalen Hurts is a great post-game guy. He looks like he carries himself very well, but it is true. He's like a statue on the sideline. You do not see him riling up his teammates saying, all right, let's go out. Okay, we had a bad series. Let's go. Let's keep it moving. Let's try to get back on track. And another thing we have to realize is A.J. Brown, throughout the season, we saw him get very, very frustrated at Jalen Hurts, at Sirianni. Sirianni got mad at A.J. Brown. Sirianni got mad at Hassan Reddick. There's a lot of these moments where players and coaches were getting frustrated at one another. We saw in the Vikings game, A.J. Brown's yelling at Jalen Hurts. They were winning. They won that game, and A.J. Brown, and that was early in the season. I believe it was their home opener. We saw A.J. Brown frustrated after a win. So I think right there we sort of saw an inkling of, oh, God, there's something internally that is not right. And to have your head coach be so animated that you need the head of security to keep you in check, it's not a great sign that you can't keep your own emotions in check throughout the game, that you need your head of security to come in there to keep you in check. For me, it's a complete bad look.
Well,
and not only that, add on top of that, you were 10-1. Your only loss was to the Jets at that point. Then you not only fall apart, you crumble. Like by that Buccaneers game, it was just a pile of ash. There was nothing left.
Mostly on the defense, right? It seemed like the defense fell apart, and I think it was partly a leadership issue where the defensive coordinator wound up heading up into the stands.
Yeah, Sean Desai, yeah.
And Matt Patricia was calling the defensive plays on the sidelines. I got to think that is a confusing situation for the players to know, well, who really is the leader here? Is it the defensive coordinator or is it Matt Patricia? And that's something where I think Sirianni made a mistake. I think he should have I really think he should have stuck with his DC. That's who he picked for the year, and he should have let him continue to be the full leader. I mean, you can have Matt Patricia as an advisor or such, but having him call the plays on the sideline during the game when your DC is up in the stands, that's odd.
Not only that,
and it didn't work.
Right.
It didn't work.
Right.
The defense stunk at the rest of the season.
I think it got slightly worse, too, which is very hard to do when your defense was already very, very poor up to that point. But what also was weird about that is you demoted him, essentially, but still kept him on your team. For me, that's humiliating. You got a guy who got kicked out of New England, who got bashed on for being an OC, who wasn't a great head coach, and now you put him in as your defensive play caller, and yet you're still keeping your defensive coordinator. For me, that's humiliating.
Yeah.
I get demoted, and I got to move up into the coach's box and not do anything, basically. I have another guy calling my plays. It's a weird situation.
He wound up getting fired, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
no, they fired both their
Patricia
OC and
is gone
DC.
too. Patricia,
I believe Patricia is gone.
He's going elsewhere.
But
so I don't know. Have they picked anybody yet?
For DC? What for their DC? Yeah, Vic Fangio, and they also got rid of their OC Brian Johnson, who supposedly Jalen Hurts didn't love, his offensive strategy and offensive philosophy. I think it really shows because we had questions about how, like after the Super Bowl, when Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. They left to go to the head coach. The Jonathan Gannon went to the Cardinals and Steichen went to the Colts to be head coaches. We thought, how big of a downgrade will this be? Will we see any slippage of offense or defensive prowess heading into this season? And I think a lot of people thought, well, you know what? We'll have to wait and see. I'm not entirely sure. Is it Jalen Hurts' incredible athletic ability? Is it A.J. Brown being on the team? Is it Nick Sirianni? Or is it the coordinators? And we saw it was the coordinators' problem. What I also find fascinating is that you replaced Brian Johnson with Kellen Moore. How did Kellen Moore look with Justin Herbert? Not great. Not great. Had a pretty poor season. So we'll have to see if that's something. But and Vic Fangio, okay as a defensive coordinator. I don't know if that's going to exactly turn out okay because we saw the defensive backs. James Bradbury got cooked. A number of defensive backs for the Eagles got cooked this year.
The Eagles need to go out and get some players too, right? I mean, they lost some players last year, and it showed up on the defensive side of the ball. They were okay when they won 10 games.
They did.
Right? They won 10 games. They were undefeated, and they lost to the Jets, which was odd.
Yep.
I think they just they weren't ready to play there. They thought there was going to be a cakewalk, and that's usually a mistake when you go in with an attitude like that. And then they they had a run there where they were playing very difficult teams and winning. And then we were saying, hey, they look like the Super Bowl winners for this year. Their resilience and their ability to come back in games against really good teams. And it took a lot out of them, I think. And then they got beat by Dallas, and it was all downhill from there. It
Basically,
was really bad. And they got beat by, in the playoffs by the Bucs, who had a good game, right? And the Bucs were they peaked at the right time. They were on a roll. So the fact that they won that game really wasn't a surprise to us. I did pick the Eagles to win that game, but I wasn't
mainly
surprised
because they barely beat the Panthers. That's why. That's why you.
That's right. Yeah, I mean
the
they played awful too, right? It was 9-0.
It was 9-0, and they barely won.
And they were lucky they were playing the Panthers, who are just terrible all year. So yeah, they're going into that game. It looked to me like the Eagles would win that game, but they didn't. And the Bucs, they gave a decent game against the Lions, but not a great game. Right. The Lions.
It was a terrible start, great, finish to it, but then Baker threw a late interception, sealed the game. Yeah. For me, red flags all around. I think Sirianni. I would say Sirianni's on Sirianni and McCarthy. You would have to battle it out and really nitpick on who's at the hottest of seats if you're an NFL coach. For me, it'd be Sirianni just because you made it to a Super Bowl. The complete crumble of your team up to a point where now you have a bunch of different reports. Fletcher Cox is calling out Jalen Hurts for his lack of emotion. You have Nick Sirianni not being able to keep his emotions in check. And also you're saying that Jalen Hurts had trouble with handling his brand new contract. I mean, Nick Sirianni, for me, hottest of coaching seats in the NFL. At least McCarthy's making it to the playoffs. And, while it's major disappointments, he's still winning like 12 games a year. We just saw, and the Cowboys never crumble like this. So for me, Sirianni, if we had to give a percentage chance, and I'm sure we'll do a topic of this eventually, percentage chance right now, Sirianni finishes out the year.
Finishes out the year in Philadelphia next year?
Yeah. Does he end the year as a Philadelphia head coach?
I think so, yes.
So you're saying, what, 75% chance that he does?
I don't think his Lowry, he's not the kind of person who fires people in midseason. I don't think he's been like that. I think he's a businessman. He's going to pick his people, going to stick with them, and then, when the time comes to make a change, he'll make it. And usually that's in the offseason. You don't really do it. I mean, if he falls apart and they're just awful,
right?
Then
you start off like 0-5. He's gone.
Maybe not 0-5.
Really?
Like 1-3 and 8 or 9.
Okay.
Maybe they replace him later in the season. I don't think it's early in the season. I think
I'd say you go 0-5. Sirianni's probably gone. But for me, chances on that he stays as the head coach of the Eagles to end the year with them.
They may be good next year.
I'll give it 65%.
They may be good next year. They went to the Super Bowl just a year ago, right? And they gave the dynasty Kansas City Chiefs a game, a really good game, and there was some bad ref calls in that game near the end.
You also had a fumble by Jalen Hurts that I think got returned for a touchdown as well. So for me, 65% chance Sirianni will stay as the head coach. So I'm saying 35, he's gone.
Really?
I just think he's on the hottest of seats. The fans, they're in an uproar over what exactly happened. I know a number of them probably think that he should have been fired after this season, but 65% chance he stays on. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, if you want to check out the full episode, make sure you click the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to listen to this show anywhere you go, make sure you go to anchor.fm/The Harvey Hour or anywhere you get your podcasts.